Bible chronology. It's a concept that is it's not new. The problem is that we've gotten away from it because we take a verse from this book, another verse from this book, another verse from this book, and we create a topical teaching so that we're extracting the verses, not understanding the context of where they come from, so I can make the Bible say anything that I want. So I want to show you the things that I learned about Bible chronology and the impact that it has on the story that you're going to tell. I wish we would teach books. I wish we would teach the book of John, the book of Romans, the book of Jeremiah, the book of Isaiah in complete packages, so that people would be able to understand. Okay, so we just finished the Torah portions for 2016-2017. And it just came back to me in a real way that the book of Moses, the Torah, the first 5 books, the Pentateuch, are the only books that are given as a collection. The rest of them, all of the rest of the Bible, including the New Testament, are compiled. They're put together eventually down the road. But the Torah is the only one that is given to us as a whole. So that's what I want to look at the impact that it makes on you. If you're going to take a verse from Deuteronomy and try to teach it, you're going to make a mistake, because unless you use Numbers and Exodus along with it, you're going to have a problem. So let's take a look at the chronology. So I'm just going to go through these 4 sections, right? The Law of Moses, the Kings and the Prophets, and the Gospels, and then the Acts. Acts and the Gospels are basically the same. So 3 sections. Not going to do Judges and Joshua. Not going to go into each one of the poetic books. But let's just take a look at these and see if I can make my point about why chronology is going to be important. So normally when we look at the chronology, it kind of looks like this. It's very difficult to, if you put it by years, right? It's very difficult to understand. It's all kind of runs in together. Kind of difficult to break it out. So I'm going to break it out into sections. First one we're going to look at is going to be the Torah, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books that are given to Moses. The law that is given to Moses, not the law of Moses. Okay, that's a King James concept, or an English concept. So it's the law that was given to Moses. God, who is spirit, speaks, doesn't have a face, doesn't have a mouth, speaks, the Ruach, his breath, speaks to Moses up on top of Mount Sinai and gives him this information. Moses is writing everything down. So the breath, the word, the Devarim, becomes a word that Moses writes down. They're one and the same. You can't separate them. Now, did Moses write down every individual word? Probably, but the problem is that when we have it translated into the Latin, into the English, into the Greek, into the Hebrew, well, not Hebrew, but then we may add some words here and there. So that's kind of what we're going to look at. This is why chronology to me is important. Okay, when we look at the Pentateuch, at the Torah, we all know that it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, right? The order, and Numbers and Deuteronomy. But Leviticus isn't here. Leviticus is not in chronological order. Leviticus is a collection of scrolls that are compiled and put together. So the chronology is actually Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And that's what I want to show you. So Moses starts writing basically about his life when they come out into the Exodus. When he's called, he's been trained by the Egyptians. He knows how to write. Okay, so, and I think he's got, Joshua's the one, and it'll tell you somewhere there that when Moses left the tabernacle, Joshua would stay in the presence of Jehovah. So some say Joshua wrote this, but Moses is the one that is getting this information. He's the one that goes up. So whether he comes down and Joshua is described as writing it doesn't matter. It's coming through Moses. This is what the people said. We're afraid of this noise, right? So you go, Moses, and whatever he tells you, that we will do. And that begins the role of the prophet. God will speak to the prophet will speak to the people. The people will not ask God directly. I mean, he said it that way because this is what they chose to do. The thing that they have said is good. So I will no longer speak to them directly, but I will send them a prophet to test them. So sometimes you get some prophet that will lead you wrong. Sometimes they will lead you the correct way if they know the law. Okay, so it starts out with the 80 years of Moses. Now, there, the first chapter of Exodus is 300, 400 years, right? And the genealogies that is there, but this is kind of, we have the 80 years of Moses, and then we're going to have the Exodus when they come out, and then we're going to have the first set of laws that are given is when he gives manna and the Sabbath. It's the first set of laws that are given before Mount Sinai. So all of this is still in order, and then we get to Mount Sinai, and 2 times for 40 days he goes up. Some of us know of one, but actually he went for 80 days. So that's almost 3 months. 10 days short of 3 months, right? So that's a long time that he's gone. And then it gets to after the first one, when God tells him go down because something's going on with the people, and this is where Moses, they have the golden calf. When Moses takes the tent of the meeting and pitches it outside the place, and then he goes up and talks to the Lord. Talks to Jehovah, and he says, show me your glory. I mean, you say you know me by my name, but show me your glory. So this is where I say that when God says there is a place by me in this cleft of the rock, in this cliff of the rock, where I will put my hand and I will pass before you. You can't see in front of me. You can't see my pana, my face. God doesn't have a face in the back, right? But so this is, you can't see before me. But you can see back. You can see the things that I have done. So glory is when you can physically see the things that he has done. And this is when I say Moses is given Genesis backwards. And this is when he writes it. So Genesis wasn't the first book that was written. I mean, you have to understand that. So when God tells Moses, to your fathers I did not make myself known by my name. They saw me by El Shaddai, right? They saw me by my might and my power. I said, but you're going to see me. You're going to see me by my name, by the miracles and the things that I do. They know me as the mighty one, but I didn't really show them, my might. So understanding that concept, because then you're going to get these, the first mention is in Genesis, and this is kind of where that's scholarship, when we take something that is given to us, but unless you know the context, then Moses is writing with words that he knows now, and he may be interjecting them into Genesis, right? Okay, so first mention can be first mention, but chronology to me is a little bit more important. What does it mean? When Abraham is sacrificing, is it the same as the sacrifices of the tabernacle? Well, Moses may look at them that way because he recognizes, he sees it, but Abraham didn't know. Okay, so chronology is important. Show me your glory, and then you're going to have when he comes down the second time, he's given the instructions to the instructions to the tabernacle, everything about the tabernacle. So in my opinion, this is 1 year. This is because he sets it up, and in the second year, the first month, on the first day is when the tabernacle is set up. So Exodus is 1 complete year. I mean, from the Exodus from the 14th, from the 15th, right, to the end of the year. From what I can tell, from what I can read, that would mean that then, and I had a hard time with this. If I were to look at my timeline, I would, I know I went back and I looked at it, and I noticed that I had the instructions to the priest, the instructions to the leper, the instructions to sacrifices. I had them all split up, and that may be true. But what I realized when I was doing this is that all of Leviticus had to have been given when the tabernacle was done in order for the tabernacle to function. They had to have all the instructions of the priest and everything else, right? So it seems to me I realized that the Leviticus had to be complete before the tabernacle was introduced, before the tabernacle was set up. They had to have the instructions of the Kohanim, of the priests, right? The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, the Levites, the ones that would attach the people unto God. They had to have this. So I see Leviticus as not being spread out, but actually as given as a whole right before the tabernacle was set up. I could be wrong, but probably right. Then we get into the second year, and this is when numbers start, right? The second year they set up the tabernacle. The 14th they have to do a Passover. Chapter 9. So chapter 9 comes before chapter 1, technically. And then you're going to have the 38 years of silence, right? Now I just finished this introduction, and I showed that some of you were able to see that and then you're going to have the 40th year. That is also includes Deuteronomy or Devarim as the 11th month, right? So Numbers actually includes the final 39 years technically, right? So then because the Devarim or Deuteronomy is the 11th month, he sits there for 30 days and he repeats the law verbatim, not giving them a second law, but he speaks the law to them. So the way that he speaks to them is going to be different than the way that he wrote it down 38 years ago. So you have to know that, you have to compare that. Otherwise, you read Deuteronomy, you think, well, this is got to be the instruction that is given on the Sabbath, the instruction that is given on the Feast of Sukkot. No, you got to combine all of them. You have to put them all together. Okay, so then this is why I say that in the Torah you actually have 3 years of instructions that are given with 37 silent years, right? I mean, can you see that you actually have 3 years of information that is given to us in the Torah? So chronology is important, right? Don't teach Deuteronomy without Exodus and Numbers. You will blow it. You will make a mistake. Okay, if you understand it, then you can keep it in order. Okay, if you don't understand this, then you're going to try to teach something that isn't there. So Paul tells Timothy, these teachers of the law that are coming, they want to teach the law, not knowing anything about the law. So don't teach Paul unless you've taught this, unless you've studied this, and you'll make a mess of it. You're going to mislead the people. Okay. The Torah, that's the first portion of it. Okay, the next section is going to be the kings and the prophets, and this is very, very interesting. Okay, so the way that we look at it now is we have 1 Samuel in Hebrew Shmuel, right? 2 Shmuel, 1 Kings and 2 Melachim. So 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings and 1 Kings and 2 Kings, and then you had the 70 years when they went into captivity, and then you have the exiles when they returned. Okay, Chronicles basically follows the Kings, but Chronicles is the first Chronicles has a lot of genealogy. At the very end of it, you have a little bit of David. David actually belongs over here in 2 Samuel. So Chronicles is not in order. The stories are not in order. They're bits and pieces of story. They're historical narrative. So if you want to know what happened, read Kings, and then add whatever Chronicles has to that in order to understand what is there. Again, otherwise you're teaching something out of Chronicles, and people will read it, and then later on when you teach out of Kings, it doesn't make sense. So you have to understand that there may be two versions of the story here. Okay, let me just show you where this came from. Originally in the Septuagint and the Vulgate, now we don't have the 200 BC before Christ, that we don't have that copy of the Septuagint LXX. Okay, the copy that we have is from the 4th, the 5th, the 6th century. The copies of copies of copies. Okay, so this is just telling you they're the ones originally that made it 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 3 Kings, and 4 Kings. They actually created the breakup, because 1 Kings is going to be Samuel, 2 Kings is going to be David, and then 3 Kings is going to be Solomon, and then 4 Kings is going to be all of the rest of the kings. But this is where this kind of comes from. The Jewish Bible doesn't have it that way. The Jewish Bible has it was actually one book, 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings. Kings was 1 and Samuel 1. They broke it out, 1st and 2nd Samuel. Okay, and then they took the Chronicles and they put it under the writings. So it's not a part of Kings, because they look at Chronicles as an addition, as a historical addition. You want to read what happened to David, read Kings, read Samuel, right? Chronicles again will add that, and then again they added theirs under the writings, where Daniel is there, where Esther is there. But so that's the distinction that we have. So if we can go back. Okay, so 1 Samuel is going to be Samuel and Saul. 2 Samuel is going to be the story of David, and then the introduction to Solomon, right? And then 1 Samuel also at the end of it also has the introduction to David. So you know that they overlap. But if you're talking about David, you're in 2 Samuel. And bottom line, 1 Kings is Solomon. And then the 2 Kings is going to be about all of the rest of the kings and the prophets. Okay, so if you know that, and somebody is reading, and you didn't catch what book they were in, you know the books if you understand this concept here. Okay, and then so Chronicles again. Chronicles is a lot of genealogy. Okay, so if I wanted to look at Samuel, I would look under the story of Samuel, and Eli and Hannah, right? And her husband, Samuel is given, and then Saul is anointed king, and then we're going to have the story of David. Now, when I go back, this is something that I think I looked at it, and I had never seen this before. When they ask for a king, it seems to me that somewhere around that time, it could have been a little bit before that, is when the Ark of the Covenant is taken by the Philistines. So it's almost like we know that Samuel got upset, right? And the Lord, Jehovah says to Samuel, "Don't worry, that this is against me." But the Ark is gone. The Ark is gone during the life of Samuel, through the life of David. David is the one that brings it back. So the Ark of the Covenant is not at the tabernacle. And so it occurred to me that it seems to me that when they asked for a king, the presence of the Lord, the symbolic presence of the Lord went to the Philistines. And it was at the house of Obed-Edom, right? The servant of Edom. That was also a Levite. He knew how to take care of it, and he was getting blessed. And then all over here during this time, Samuel is against David. Saul is against David. Samuel is upset with Saul. It's like it's a turmoil. It's a problem. The Ark of the Covenant is not there. And David goes to the tabernacle, and he says he's hungry. He wants and he wants to feed his men, right? But Ahimelech kind of notices. Is afraid that Saul may know. He knows that some of Saul's people are here, and so he's kind of caught in between. Do I help David? He knows David's been anointed by Samuel already, and then, or do I stay faithful to Saul? Just so you know, eventually he's the one that will anoint the son of David before Solomon, so that he gets banished from the priesthood. Okay, so understanding these stories, the chronology is important. So when the life of David, how can David write, "I will enter into his gates," right? I will enter into his gates with thanksgiving. I will enter into his courts with praise. If during his lifetime he was never able to enter there without the presence of the Lord, without the presence of Jehovah being there, in the name of the symbolism of the ark, right? Where I have put my name is what he says. Where the ark went, if they went before, that's where the Lord will go before them. Do you see that? Okay, so when David finally brings it in, and then Uzzah dies, and David brings it and puts it in the courtyard of his house, not in the courtyard or not in the house of the tabernacle, not in the Holy of Holies, and yet the Lord gives him rest because there's a temple that's being built. You see anything in which means Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, could not have been performed without the Ark of the Covenant for the time of Samuel and for the time of David. So how does it function? So when some of us say, well, without the tabernacle, without the temple, you can't. This isn't new. This happened way back then, and yet they were able to function. Daniel didn't have neither the temple nor the articles, nor the ark. And yet he was able to function. Okay, so anyway, if we get into Kings, and we're going to look at Solomon, Shlomo, right? And then the temple is going to be built, and then we get into the writings. Obviously, they have to be by David and by Solomon. They're the ones that wrote the majority of those. They would have to be somewhere around that time, the poetic book, right? And then we're going to have in second Kings second Melachim is where the kingdom is going to start to split, right? You get the north and you get the south, and then you're going to have that's basically the years that are there. But the northern kingdom leaves 130 years before Judah falls. That's significant. That's important that we understand this. You know, when we use Israel here, it isn't talking about Israel collectively. It's talking about the northern kingdom. Okay, then you have the 70 years of captivity in Babylon. Then you have the when they come out, and then they're under Persia. Okay. Daniel is going to be, since he was taken 10 years before the destruction of Jerusalem. That's important. So he wasn't in captivity for 70 years. He's in captivity for 80 years, right? He's taken as a young man. Okay, so Samuel, but Daniel is a son of Judah, so he's a son of David, right? And he's going to reign in exile, second in command to Nebuchadnezzar. So he's a king that is reigning in exile, the same way that Joseph was second in command. Okay, and then you have Nehemiah, who's a governor, not a prophet, he's a governor, and then you have Ezra that's going to be working with him. Okay, so now let's look at the prophets, how they fit. In the beginning, we only have Samuel, and then during the lifetime of David, we have Nathan, and then there's also mention of Gad, right? When he's counting the people, Gad is the one that is talking to him. And then when the kingdom is about to, under Solomon, you have Nathan, and then after Solomon dies, then Ahaz comes in, and his wife brings in all the priests of Baal. They take over the temple. So you have Elijah and Elisha that are the prophets during that time. Well, it's still collectively one, except Elijah is working outside of the temple, the same way that John the Baptist is working outside of the temple while the temple is functioning. Right? Because the temple is closed off to the poor, to the sick, to the lame. This is why Jesus is healing outside of the temple, and we think he's doing a new thing. No, he's doing because he's still going to go to the temple and teach, but he knows that there, and when he heals there, the issue is not that he healed them. The issue is that he healed them on a Sunday, on a Sabbath, on a Shabbat. So you have to look at the issues, right? You have to look at what's happening. Okay, then you're going to have the kings when the kingdom splits. The prophets to the north kingdom and the prophets to the southern kingdom. Okay, and then you're gonna have Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Daniel overlap from where there's still a kingdom to the captivity. All three of them are speaking, during the time. Daniel is taken; he's already in Babylon, and then it says within 3 years, right? Within 3 years, he's second in command. And so Jeremiah writes, I know the plans, right? And then Daniel is able to understand by the writings of Jeremiah that 70 years are determined of other people. So they're contemporaries, they're working the same. Ezekiel, Jeremiah is in Jerusalem, Daniel is in the capital, and Ezekiel is by the river Kabar. He's a captive, he's one of the priests, right? And he's actually through the lineage of Hilkiah, the high priest. Okay, and and then we're going to have the prophets that were prophesying once they came out, and they're starting to restore the temple. We have those prophets. So if you understand the chronology, you kind of know where to go and find them. It's real easy to go and find them. Okay, and this is why when we take verses out of 2 Kings in order to preach a sermon on a topic, it's not a good thing. We're taking things out of context. We're trying to apply it to now when it could have been applying to the northern kingdom, to the southern kingdom, to the ones that are in Babylon. So we have to understand the context of what is happening. Amen? I mean, that's simply as simple as I can put it. Okay, so that Malachi is giving us a sermon when we go into the Gospels. Malachi is just telling you about the messenger that he's going to send, and then he's going to talk about Elijah. I'm going to send also Elijah, right? And it says, but don't forget the instructions of Moses, my servant. So you have the messenger that he comes before. You have Elijah or Elijah, which Jesus says actually John was. If you really understand, John was the one. He said, but don't forget Moses, the laws, the instructions that are given, that I gave to Moses, don't forget them. Okay, Okay, so you get in 3, and this is when we get into the Gospels. Look into the Gospels.